the CTE Educational Specialist at Region 17, and Tally Jo Stout, who is the CTE Specialist at ESC Region 6. And it's great to have these two experts here today. Tally and Heather, when we were doing the CTAC chats and we were having the administrators and the gatherings, we had those 4 gatherings where people could just pop in. All of the questions had to do with, or a lot of the questions had to do with the CLNA. And so Robin put together this live Zoom, and we're going to let you take over in just a second. Robin did ask me to if you haven't well, we're good. I can't, hang on one sec. Okay, there we are. And we're going to, right now, thank everyone for being here, and we'll establish the norms for the room. If you would go ahead and mute yourself, and then I will go and I will monitor the Zoom group chat. I'm pointing to it over here. You can't see me, but like I have good sense, I'm pointing to it. But if you'll type your questions in the Zoom group chat, I'll try to monitor those, and when we get to a break or an event, then I'll break in and ask that question. Then at the end, we might have time for a question and answer to where you can open up your mic and you can better explain. So without any further ado, Heather, Tally Jo, thank you for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully that is sharing. Everybody see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm trying to get it to, there we go. Thank you for asking us to share this with you today. We're happy to do it, and I know you probably have lots of questions, and we've all kind of been answering them over the last couple of months. So Tally and I'm going to go through, put this together. I'm going to go through a few basic slides to begin with that kind of answer some basic questions that we get fairly often. And hopefully, and this may be some of the questions you guys have had. I'm going to go through those and kind of making sure you know where to find things and who can submit and do things like that. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tally, and she's going to walk you through an example that we have that may kind of put you at ease and give you an idea of kind of what they're looking for when you're completing the CLNA. And then we will definitely have plenty of time for questions and answers. And I think we are going to try to ask that as I'm going through these first slides, if you do have a question, go ahead and type that in the chat. That's perfectly fine. But we'll keep everyone muted and then save that time towards the end to ask those questions, because some of the questions you have, we may come up on one of the slides, and that way we can kind of keep it flowing from there. And so hopefully all the connections and everything stays good during this time. I did put Tally and I's email addresses here on this first slide, but what Tally and I really wanted to reiterate is that please reach out to your ESC specialist that's in your service center in your regions. We are all here to help you complete the CLNA and there to answer questions for you. And so we're all still working during this time, and please be sure to reach out to those folks for assistance. And at the end, if you're not sure who your ESC specialist is, I have a link on one of the slides where you can go find that. Maybe you're new and that's just, you haven't been able to locate that person. So we want to make sure you know where those folks are. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Just kind of wanted to start with this slide as an overview, just to kind of remind you 3 key points about this comprehensive local needs assessment. And it really is the foundation of Perkins 5 and the implementation at the local level. It is there to help drive that implementation and that local application that you'll be filling out soon. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to engage a multitude of stakeholders in this process and to really get a feel for their thoughts on CTE programs and how overall, in the end, you could have the best CTE programs that you have within your districts. And you'll also notice through the CLNA process, it really is about data-driven decision-making and really utilizing the data that we now have. And we have some great data now, and we'll continue to get some more great data to help really make the best decisions you can regarding your programs and to really help take those to the next level. So as you probably already know, each LEA that's going to receive and wants to receive their Perkins funds is going to be required to complete and submit a needs assessment once every 2 years. So there's a kind of a little, yay, it's not every year, it's every other year. So this will be the first year for us to start this. And so next year you'll have off and you won't have to complete this that year. There are some differences if you are an independent and completing and receiving your Perkins funds on your own, or if you're a member of the shared service arrangement. And I know there are lots of shared service arrangements around the state. So if you are a member of a Perkins SSA, you will only be asked to complete 4 sections of that comprehensive local needs assessment. So as an SSA member, you will be asked to complete sections 1, 2, 4, and 7. You'll see that there on the screen. If you're an independent, you receive over $15,000 in Perkins funding, and you can apply for that on your own independently, you will be asked to complete all 7 sections of that CLNA. So that will be sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the important thing to remember is that the CLNA must be completed prior to that local application being released and available to you. So that means for SSAs, all of the members have to complete their CLNA before that application is available to the SSA. And I did want to point out here too, once you are in the CLNA, and we'll show you a screenshot here in a minute, and you select that you are a member, you want to apply as a member of an SSA, that's how you'll be applying, it will only open up sections 1, 2, 4, and 7 for you. So that way you're not confused by what sections you have to complete. It will only open up the ones you need to complete. Otherwise, as an independent, all 7 sections will be there for you to complete. Kind of wanted just to review some important dates. So as most of you probably already know, the CLNA submission deadline has been extended due to the current COVID-19 situation and school closures. So now the CLNA submission deadline is June 1st. It was May 1st, but it is now June 1st. You have an extra month to get that done. We do, and TEA as well, encourage, if you have it ready prior to June 1st, if you have it ready May 1st, go ahead and send that in. That is definitely welcomed by the agency, as it will help the review process as all of these are reviewed. You'll see there the Perkins ADC will be available on May 15th if you have completed your CLNA and the grants consolidated schedule. So if your CLNA has been completed and accepted and your grants consolidated schedule, the SC 5003 has been completed, then you'll be able to access your Perkins ADC on May 15th. That's still what's on the books. The Perkins local application will open June 2nd. That is what we're still seen now, June 2nd. But again, until your CLNA is completed, you will not have access to that application. So just keep that in mind. And then the local application submission deadline is still currently September 3rd. If we receive anything different on these deadlines, we'll be sure TEA will send those out, and then I know all the specialists will be sending those out through our respective newsletters and correspondence as well. But for sure, right now, we want you to focus on that CLNA deadline extension, and that is June 1st. We also just want to reiterate, the stakeholder engagement is a big piece of the CLNA, and there are minimum participants that are required to be a part of that process at your district. TEA realizes that we're now in a situation where maybe you had planned on in-person meetings, and that's just not possible to happen right now. So involving stakeholders in virtual ways is completely fine. That is understandable. So you may do a Zoom, you may have GoToMeetings, you may even do it through some email correspondence. But that is okay as we're in this very unusual time right now and working in a very different manner. So they still want those stakeholders to be involved, but it can definitely be done in a virtual way.
Heather, there's a couple of questions coming up. Will you be able to share this PowerPoint, or is this one that you can't share?
No, I can share it.
And I'll post it on the CTAT website.
Sure, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Heather, there is one discussion based really quick since you just made this statement about the stakeholders input. One is, has anyone used a Google form? Yes, we've actually in the area of Region 6, and I've actually shared that with your specialist at your service center. So we will reiterate, please contact your service center specialist. They are there to help you. We had kind of did some collaboration at CTAC conference and kind of created a Google form that can be copied and used for your own benefit. But I've had several districts use that type of form, get their data, and then create it into a statement that has worked just great and have been approved.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Tally. So the next kind of thing we wanted to address was just the simple question of, where do I even find the CLNA? That's a question we get sometimes, and just to make sure everyone's aware of where you get that, we kind of wanted to walk you through that. So the CLNA is actually found in eGrants. So the person who is going to go in and locate the CLNA, complete the CLNA, has to have eGrants access, and that's where this document is housed. And I went ahead on this slide, and so I would not forget to remind everyone, when you're working in eGrants, you have to use Internet Explorer. The eGrant system does not like Chrome. It does not like Safari. It likes Internet Explorer. Otherwise, it won't save correctly, or it won't let you type certain letters. I think like the letter T. It won't type a T if you're not using Internet Explorer. So just kind of keep that, make you a side note. You might have to make you a sticky note to remind yourself like I do, but just keep that in mind. So to get to the eGrants, you would log in you'd have to have a Teal account as well. So you would go to access that through the TEA website. At the top of the page, you would select your Teal login. Log in through Teal using your credentials. And then you would have to if you have the access, you will look for eGrants on that applications page of your Teal account. Now, once you select that, these 3 roles are important in this process. So through eGrants, you can have a variety of roles, but for purposes of saving and then certifying and submitting the CLNA, which is also called the SC 5600, you either need to be a grantee manager, a grantee official, or grantee staff. Those are the 3 roles that are allowed to save. So type into the actual template, save it, certify, and submit it. So just keep that in mind. If you don't have any of those roles, you can ask to add those roles in eGrants in your Teal account if you choose to, or someone else may be helping you do that has this access, but this is what you'll have to be able to do that. Once you're in eGrants, this is what your screen will look like. You'll see the two blue colored bars at the top, and you will see actually eGrants there. The CLNA is actually called, it's considered a special collection. That's where the SC comes from in the SC 5600. So once you're in eGrants, you will select or click on the tab that says Special Collections. Once you click on that tab, you will get, sorry, got ahead of myself there with my circles. Then you'll get this screen. So once you select the Special Collections tab, you are going to get a list of special collections documents that are available at your district to be completed. Okay, so you'll see this specific example. There are quite a few special collections there, but in the red box, you'll see 2021 SC 5600 Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. And then right beside that, you'll see that it's tied to the 2020-2021 Perkins Education Grant. And then beside that, you will see that it says available. So that means it is available for you to open and start working on. Just ignore that that says 5/1. This is a screenshot from a while ago. So that is June 1 now, not 5/1. So once you get here, this is hyperlink. So you click on that hyperlink for the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, and then the actual CLNA document will open up for you. And it's just a screenshot of that document, and this is the first part of it. You'll see there, I've given you a little bit of a hint. I don't know if you've seen or not. I know through my region, I've been sharing it out through trainings and through newsletters. I'm sure everyone else at the service centers has done the same. But there is a CLNA guidebook that was developed to help guide you through this process. And so you can actually access it directly from the CLNA document in eGrants. So if you will look on that top right where it says instructions, and if you click on instructions, it should open up the CLNA guidebook for you, so you can utilize that if you haven't received it in another way prior to that. So you'll see the very first part 1 that you will complete is pretty simple, and it is literally just checking a radio button. But it is very important. So you have 4 options. You'll have the option of apply on your own. The next option is apply as a fiscal agent of an SSA. The third option you'll see is not apply at all. And then that 4th option is apply as a member of an SSA. So this is important because it tells the system how you're applying and what kind of applicant you are. And so if you're an independent, you do your application on your own, you receive over $15,000, you select that apply on your own button. There are instances where school districts are a fiscal agent of an SSA, and there are ESCs that are fiscal agents of an SSA. If you are the fiscal agent of an SSA for Perkins, you're going to select that button. And if you, for whatever reason, have decided that you do not want to move forward with Perkins next year, you're not going to accept the funds, they do still want you to go into this CLNA document and select not apply at all. Okay, that is important to do that as well. So you would, if you're not going to apply, you're not going to accept Perkins funds next year, you'll want to go in and accept not apply at all. And then if you're going to be a member of an SSA, then you'll select that last box. And as I mentioned earlier, that selection then determines what opens up within that document for you to complete. So you won't have to, hopefully it kind of eliminates some confusion on those pieces that you have to complete. But you have to be able, you have to check that box and make sure that you're checking the right one so you complete the right parts of the CLNA. This does not take the place of the ADC form that will be released in May. You will still have to do that ADC form in eGrants as a part of the Perkins process. It is important, though, that whatever you mark on this CLNA form in this applicant designation piece matches what you mark on your ADC form in May. Those need to be the same. So if you're applying on your own here, when you complete your ADC form, you also need to check the box apply on your own. So that's that first part that's key to completing the CLNA document. Now, I'm not going to take you through every part right now. We're going to look at that in a minute when Tally's going over the example. But what I did now want to move to was providing you with where you find some data that you're going to need to complete the CLNA and the data you're going to need to have the discussions with your stakeholders. So that's what I'm going to move into next. So where do I find my data? And this has been a question too that has come up fairly often. So on February 7th, I believe it was, TEA released to all districts in the state some CTE baseline data. And it's some really great data that we have not actually had to that detail maybe in the past. So it's exciting to get it. But it is in a place that certain access is required to get to. And so it's important that you know where this is. And if you don't have this access, you know who to talk to how to get the access. So this baseline data was released in TEAL as well, through the TEAL system. And it is within the accountability component of TEAL. So whoever at your district has TEAL access and has access to the accountability reports for your district is the person who can access the CTE baseline data that you're going to need for completion of the CLNA. Once they are in the accountability portion of TEAL, you'll see over to the right, there's a tab that says CCMP, which stands for College Career Military Prep. It will be within that tab. So you'll select that tab once you're within that accountability there. And then you will see two documents, and these are the two documents that you will need to reference as you complete the CLNA. The first one there you'll see is the Perkins 5 CLNA report 2020-2021, and it says an Excel below it. And then you have Perkins CLNA supplemental report. They're the same data, just in different formats, basically. The CLNA Excel is numbers. If you're a numbers person and you like to look at it that way, that's your report. But the supplemental report is in a PDF version, and what they did was take the data, the numbers from that Excel report, and put it into some charts and graphs that are much easier to read and review. And then also with some additional kind of narrative with each of those charts. So you'll want to print out both of these documents. You may have that person print them out for you, or they may obviously save, download, and shoot them to you electronically. But these are the documents you're going to need to review as you go through that CLNA process. And again, this is whoever at your district has that access to the accountability reports specifically for your district is who can access this information. Oh, I kind of got ahead of myself there. You'll see that supplemental report will help you answer those specific questions on the CLNA, and it really does. It is very specific, and you can tell what question ties to what information on that report. It's nice. And then again, every district has access to this information. You'll see that's just a screenshot on the side of the first page of that supplemental report and what it will look like. The other question we get is in regards to the labor market data and where to find that, because there are a couple questions about labor market data and how what you're offering aligns or doesn't align potentially to the labor market for your workforce development area. And so to find this information that you're going to need, it is located on the TEA CTE webpage, and at the bottom of this screen, that's actually the link to the TEA page. Whoop, it took me to it. It's very touchy. So once you're here, let's go ahead and do it this way. You'll see right here under CTE Programs of Study, the LWDA Labor Market Information and Resources. So if you'll just select that, it's going to take you to the page with just that information. What I did want to point out, because this is a question that came up to me, you'll notice where it says Regional Labor Market Information, WDA, and then there are numbers. These numbers do not correspond to the ESC region numbers. So if you're in region 5, or I'll just use region 17. If I'm in region 17 and I'm a district and I went to the one that was 17 and I clicked on it, that would be the wrong labor market information for you. So the way to tell what region, what WDA is correct for you, if you will select the education, that first link, ESC Workforce Development Agency Crosswalk, that's going to show you then your WDA area. So if you'll notice, I'm just using myself as an example, region 17, primarily our WDA area is 2. So I know my county, my school district is within this pink area. I'm going to go back and look for the WDA 2. It is going to pull up an Excel file for you. And this is where that labor market information is going to be for you. And you'll see it's categorized by the career clusters that we're all familiar with, program of study names, and then you'll see occupational titles, and then that wage and growth information to the right of that. So that's the labor market information that you're going to need as you move forward with answering and looking at that part of the CLNA. Let me see if I can get back without messing everything up. Okay. So again, that piece, you don't have to have any special access. You'll just go to the TEA page.
Heather.
Yeah.
Heather. So during that process, your screen didn't open. So what Heather did, that's okay. So what Heather did is that she actually clicked on those links inside, like where she has the red designated area. She clicked on those resources that she's kind of screenshotted there to the right. So the very top one is Education Service Center. That was where she was referencing. You would locate what WDA you have. And then the other ones below are the links that provide you the specific regional labor market for that area. One thing I'll tell you, and Heather may talk about this data, is that don't overanalyze it. They have done that for you. Monel is on here as well. I saw her earlier. Monel and I were at a meeting, and we got a phone call, and a director wanted to analyze everything in the LMI data. And so TA just kind of reminded us, they've done all the analyzing for you. You don't have to overthink it. Just kind of reference it, look at it, and see where you fit and kind of go from there. It kind of is a lot to take in, so don't try to figure out the numbers. They have more analytical knowledge than we do. Mr. Froschel does a lot of that for us at CTAC conferences, and he's done some really great work with CTE in some of that area.
Yeah, thanks, Tally. That's for sure. They've already pulled the data and organized it by high wage, high demand, high growth, by cluster. They've already done that for you. So it's in that spreadsheet. Just be sure that you go to that ESC crosswalk, determine where your workforce development area is, and then go down and select the appropriately numbered workforce development area. Otherwise, you may be way off looking at your data. And again, I'll send these slides out, so you'll have the links and everything. I'll send those to Mark. I did want to, this was a question too, I know we've gotten, is who was included in this data. And so just kind of briefly wanted to show you, and you may have, these slides are from trainings that we have done at the service centers across the state, trainings that TEA has done at various conferences. And so these are the same exact slides. Just kind of looking at, you all know that we will have, new CTE indicators moving forward, starting with this next year. And we're moving to an auto-coded system. We won't be self-reporting those anymore, which is super exciting. I know for a lot of you that it takes hours and days to code those students. Next year, that's not going to be the case. And so that's kind of how they started utilizing that to collect our baseline data. And so you may be saying, well, what kids were a part of this baseline data? And so this next slide kind of goes through that. What they did was use the 2017-2018 graduation cohort of students that was calculated, their coursework and their coding was calculated based on course completion records from the previous 7 years. And they went back 7 years in the event that some of those students took CTE courses for high school credit in middle school. They wanted to make sure that they captured all of that. Then they used the statewide programs of study courses and were able to calculate and develop those coding for those students, and then from there develop that baseline data. Regional programs of study were not used in this baseline data, but moving forward in the future, those regional programs of study will be a part of that data collection and those students as they complete those. But for purposes of this, those weren't in place completely yet, and so they just focused on those statewide programs of study with that 2017-2018 graduation cohort. And they had to start somewhere, and after much discussion, this was the best way to have the best baseline data to start with. And it will evolve, obviously, as we move forward. Those were kind of the main questions, those main things we wanted to touch on first. I put this in here, I already said this, but please reach out to your regional ESC specialist for assistance. We have all been trained in the CLNA and are here to help you. I did put a link, you'll see a link there at the bottom. It will take you to a TEA site where there is a listing of all the specialists in each of the service center areas. Some of our areas have more than one specialist, and then for some areas there's just one of us. But if you're not exactly sure who your specialist is, that link will take you there and will provide the contact information if you need to get in contact with those specialists. Those were the high points that I wanted to cover first, to make sure that we just covered those kind of the easier questions to answer and the ones that we've seen pretty often. And now we have an example, as I mentioned earlier. Tally's going to kind of walk you through. I'm going to be sharing it on my screen, so be patient as Tally talks and I scroll, and hopefully I get it on the screen correctly. So give me just a second and I'm going to open that up.
So while Heather's opening that, we kind of want to give you kind of where we're going to go with this. Over time, we found some tidbits to make this simpler for you. And I don't want to say simple, but easier exercise that it's not overwhelming. And so some of this I'm talking through my Region 6 districts, which I see there's one on here that's actually completed his CLNA with us. And so what I want to do is I want to take you through the examples she's going to show and kind of some things that we've learned through the process or data that you should put. Heather, are you okay?
Are you seeing it?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I think I'm gonna have to stop sharing this screen and
okay, you go ahead. And I'll kind of
second.
talk through some things, yeah. And so what we want to do now is, and we have about 25 minutes, so we want to be very, understanding of your time. We know
now can you
45
see it?
minutes to it. Yes, is where we are. So when you look at this was put out by TA. This was their recommendation, and Heather's covered the first part of it. One thing that I do recommend when you open this I think that you type this in an outside document. We use a Google Doc for our districts that request our assistance. So what we do is we kind of have a template that we share with them, and then they start putting their information in, and we kind of assist them through the process. But an outside document definitely helps you kind of get your word count exactly right, makes you has you the ability to collaborate with outside specialists or inside your district. So the one thing that I want to show you on this screen is that the very first thing that I suggest you use is use your supplemental guide. That's pretty much your go-to for this. It's pretty much step by step by step through the process. Now, one little caveat to that is this very first section. So inside your CLNA supplemental guide, the very first page, which Heather showed earlier, is your statewide data comparison. Well, that is not your first comparison performance paragraph there you're creating. That is for you to review strictly for part 2, 1, and 2. That's strictly what you're looking at. You are literally in part 2, number 1, stating exactly what come out of that supplemental guide. Check the boxes. So from what we've heard from our TA reviewers and even our specialists is that they're using this data to then look at some of the other parts. So make sure that in that CLNA supplement, they told you had a performance indicator target area in 1S1, 5S4, whatever those are, check the boxes. The second one there is simply stating that you reviewed the data. That's all. It's a very simple process in that first section, in part 2 and part 2, 1, and 2. Trying to be very clear. Apologize. And then we move into part 3. So if you're looking at your CLNA supplement, and I wish we could share one, but we don't have one that doesn't share another district's data. But if you're looking at your supplemental data, this very paragraph here that says compare the performance of CTE learners with non-CTE learners on accountability and include a possible explanation for many differences. You should simply be, we're comparing CTE learners with non-CTE learners, blah, blah, blah. And in the areas that you did not achieve that indicator in, once again, supplemental data says it. It's the second chart, and right underneath it, it has a little bit of it has a little excerpt that either says you had none or you had 1.1, 1.2, such, and so on. Here, you are simply going to restate that. That's what you want to do. You want to say that my non-CTE learners in the following areas, just as they did, 2S2 academic proficiency in reading and language arts. Now, there is some other verbiage there. The non-CTE learner passing rate was 5.1. Those are things that dig a little deeper, but they are simply asking you to restate what indicator you did not, or indicators, many of you will have multiple, that those performances were found to be different. Here, the next piece is that your possible explanation. That is where you need to collaborate with other areas than CTE, because some of this is outside areas. One here that comes up for academics performance in reading and language art. I had a district that changed English teachers. They had one, not multiple. They changed English teachers every year for 4 years. That simple statement impacts all of reading and language arts students. They're looking for you to have a possible explanation. They're not looking for you to have all explanations. If you're a TIPS school, or you have, yes, we can share this example of CLNA because this is from TA. This is their example. And so we definitely can share that out. If you have other possible reasons that come in some of your other school improvement, look to those. All right, Heather. So the next little area there, you're going to look and you should be formatting a narrative response from the data 2.4 in your supplemental guide. And it's kind of hard to see, but if you look at your supplemental guide, 2.4 gives you that information. And I don't know how to say this any simpler, but this is literally you putting the data that you received in a paragraph form. You're telling them what you have. You're not explaining it. You're not doing anything. Heather, can you maybe if I make my screen over
Here.
So if you okay.
Is that better?
There we go. That's a little better, yes.
Sorry.
If you simply look here, they stated the CT learners in the different areas, and then they said what the performance below the overall district CT learners performance was and what the indicators are. So it is super, tell them what you saw. Now we've heard from different reviewers that they're okay with very simple bullet forms. You just have to remember you only have 1,000 characters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I suggest you do it in a different document. Doing it in Word or Google or any of those others gives you the ability to check it before you get in there and you're like, oh, point things to that nature. But for this portion, you're literally restating the facts straight out of your supplemental data there.
And just to point out, it's 1,000 characters, not 1,000 words.
Yeah, 1,000 characters. And I'm sorry, I keep going to word count, but 1,000 characters. All right, so the next piece that we're going to show here is straight the exact same thing. You're going to do a narrative response using the data from section 2.5 of your supplemental report. Okay, so 2.5 supplemental report, and it's just a straight, I mean, that's kind of crazy, but you're just stating the facts. You don't have to go into any reasoning, anything other than what you have in front of you on the supplemental guide. All right, so now we're going to move down to part 3. This information comes from your LMI data that Heather showed you earlier. That data has been already disaggregated for you. What I will simply say is pull up your LMI data just as they have, and some of this is kind of overkill. We've had, I think, 18 or 19 CLNAs approved recently in the last 2 weeks. And so pretty much you just need to state where your workforce data is coming from. So if you are looking at, if you're looking, for us, it was Brazos Valley or Gulf Coast. We have 3. You just simply need to state it and go exactly there. Then you need to state what the top 3 were. For ours, we simply went to the LMI data and went through the top 3 clusters that we found. You will second guess some of that just because most of you know your area, but like I said, it has its own world. And so we don't try to align with LMI. We just kind of state the facts. In our region, when we looked through the data, we found that human services was really health science careers in most areas. So simple statements like that make them understand that you've looked at your data, you know what the top 3 clusters are, either from the state level, because you can look at the state level if you feel like that better suits you, or at your regional level, which would be one of the neighboring WDAs.
Oh, and Telly, I forgot when I went over the labor market data, there is on that same page with each of the workforce development areas, second link from the top is the state data link. Okay. So when you're looking for that, it's on that same page.
So I think that the question to the right, because I am multitasking because I want to make sure we get, because these are very specific ones now. I think you're referring, so when I talk about the supplemental guide is specific to your district. When you're doing part 3, number 1, this is the WDA data, This is
Yes.
not data that's inside your supplemental, and you only need 3. You only need to do the top 3. That's all they're requesting. And they're not, their statement there is in demand, high wage. Use the top 3 that are in the report that you're using, okay? Because you don't have to try to be the analyst there, right?
Right.
It also, we found in some of yours, and some of you kind of broaden, if you have local data, as be very careful, because that's hard, because they're really wanting to use the regional, but you can say local when you get into some of these other pieces, and I'll kind of go over that. But here also in this regional, if you have 3 regional, but you have 2 areas that kind of encompass and you work from, that your kids go to workforce in, you can state both labor market areas. So like, for example, we have Gulf Coast and Brazos Valley in one of ours, that we have districts that use both of those.
Yeah.
Same with Deep East Texas, we have some. The question is regional or state, that is your choice. If you choose to do the top 3 in the region, or you choose to do the top 3 in the state, that is completely your choice.
Yeah.
Just make sure you identify that you're using the state labor market data, or you're using
Right.
the regional labor market data. Regional data, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sorry. This is very simple. Some of you will have the exact same statement there, and
Sorry.
it is perfectly okay. Oh, go back up just a little bit. I didn't get that next one. So the next one is that you're now going to identify the gaps that you have. And so I'm going to make sure. Sorry, I'm making sure I got the, so this is the alignment that you are showing between the CTE learners that you have, which is from your supplemental guide. We're just going down to the next section, and that workforce labor market. Okay. All right. So one thing that I want to say here, and like I said, Monell's on the phone or on the call, and Heather's here. This is disaggregation how you see fit. And that's kind of hard to say it that way. But one that we use in our region with our districts is the, we do a delinear evaluation. So we take our top alignments of all of our clusters, and then we take the ones that you received in your CTE learners, and we see where our deficiencies were. So this one is kind of how you see fit of looking at identifying any gaps in those areas. Does that make sense to you, Heather?
Yeah, they just want you to basically show how you align to with what you're offering to the labor market data, and then identify if you have gaps in what you're offering and how it maybe doesn't align.
Right. So for my example, and this is how we did it, and this is not, there's no right or wrong when we requested this. We took the labor market data for that region, and we listed all the clusters were in order. And then we took the data that the supplemental guide had for the district, and we listed those. And then we took the differences and kind of saw where we were deficient at, just to identify any gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're Tally, we're at 3:49 now, so.
Okay, so I'll try to move faster. So you pretty much are gonna keep going. I'll try to move faster, and we'll try to get there. What exactly? Can you look at the 3.2 table in the supplemental report and see exactly what that is? And then I'll come back to it. Based on the LAA's high school enrollment. So here, one little caveat I wanted to tell you, and we'll can move on. They simply need to know how many students you have in your district. Define what a district is for you. Is that 9 through 12? Is that 7 through 12? Whatever that looks like, that your enrollment, just as they have, how many clusters that you offer, and how many, And if you have programs of study already aligned, how many programs of study? That is simply what they need. Those 3 things have to be here. So the district size, how many CTE students that you serve, what your grade level alignment kind of looks like, middle school, high school, how many clusters you serve, and if you have your programs of study in place. That is it. That's what they want. And the reason for that is there's kind of a, to make sure that you're meeting the size and size and scope of your enrollment to your programs of study alignment there, okay? Part 4 is where many of you have come into play about having questions with your stakeholders. I will tell you that they are requesting you do your best. We've talked about that. And that's the same with 2 and 3. These are coming 2 more from your stakeholders. 3, I think you can identify this. Most of our districts don't really have any gaps, but most districts we've heard have been really, really honest in their gap areas. For part 4, part 2, this is where you're seeking out that information from your stakeholders. We've had some districts that already had the information, that they had been working with their advisory groups. They stated who their stakeholders that they worked with were, down to simple things such as who their district, their dual credit was with, who that partnership was with, any type of stakeholder that was part of their advisory board that gave input to their practicums and their career preps. So things like that, you stating who you work with and their involvement is really the key here. Now, to identify the gaps and the phasing out, that's kind of where you have to at least seek out some knowledge from them. I shared the SMORE earlier in the chat that we used to kind of originally push that data out. That SMORE gave one of my districts, they had 20 people answer that Google form. And one of the questions is, what clusters would you, what career pathways would you feel that are implementing that we should keep and which ones should get rid of? So they got the quick answers real quick. Monel answered the question for us in the 3.2. CTE learners are students who are both CTE concentrators and completers. Not sure if that was your question. I couldn't see that table there. But yes, CTE learners, and for this definition, are CTE concentrators and completers.
Correct. And it outlines that also in your supplemental, at the very beginning of your supplemental report. It also reiterates that that's who's being used there for that.
Okay, so for number 3, this is where you should start thinking of things that when you're sitting there making a master schedule or you're having conversations and you truly feel like those are barriers for kids that are sitting in your advanced classes and you can't get past it. These are things that they want to know. These are not I got yous. They read them. They just kind of see where it is. But if you simply say you have no gaps, that you do everything possible for all work-based learning kids to be adequately served, that you have no barriers in your master schedule for your dual credit and other AP honors courses to have enrollment, then that's exactly okay. And so for there, that is simply your statement. There is no data to show the gaps or if there's any deficiencies there. Some of mine have had recent methods of administration, and they've used that the methods of administration came out clean.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry, okay. So we have what if stakeholders suggest closing out a program that students flock to and enjoy? We decide not to close it and to fund it locally instead. Is it okay to ignore the input in the record card? I think if a stakeholder says and they give input to closing it, that you would put it, but you also can show things like locally, we have other input and stakeholders that value this. Ag is, one of our areas, ag is a big topic because it rises to the top. It's typically one of our #1. And so what we did is that we have local stakeholders that are very invested in that. They see need for it. It has local support, and we simply stated that. So where your stakeholder says that program isn't beneficial in the industry, but then you have others that locally value other skill sets that have, that's exactly what I'd say.
Yeah, they're not there to tell you that that's not okay for you to offer that. I mean,
I really think, and I know we're getting close to time, the CLNA, they really just want to know that you're thinking about it, that you are looking at purpose for driving your programs, having conversations, getting people to the table is clearly what it is. Now, if there's data to back apart, use it. If there's not, then simply state it as exactly what you have. Professional development should be a pretty easy one. Remember things that you've done with special education, special populations, any of the programs of study that you came to with TEA, those are good ones to put in there. If you came to, go ahead.
It doesn't have to be specifically for CTE teachers. It could have been things you did for the entire staff, like Tally said, on, like you'll see poverty training, which you did for everyone, or maybe you offered some type of sheltered instruction and everyone attended, or so those things can be listed here too, where CTE teachers were included.
We have some districts that have used core content collaboration like that. We have some that have used, when they go in and you do your new mentor teacher trainings to recruit, if you have new processes for CTE teachers, make sure you give that to them. They want to know the good things you're doing. And I also think some of this is to see how, I use this as how I can support you. So we read some of these, actually about half of these. So
I'm going to move on down to the next one. That's just about, you kind of just
I know we need to. So this is you stating and evaluating that process and coming from the industry. Just make sure that I had one that has a really good retainment policy financially. So it's, you know, you see what I'm saying? Just make sure that you just have a really thorough answer that's a comprehensive one. It's not anything special there. Here in this one for recruitment, retention, and training part 3 here, once again, some of you that are in SSAs, you don't complete these, but for this one, you need to make sure you state what your process is. And so one of this is coming back to clarify. A lot of it has to do with district of innovation. If your DOI, not saying they're gonna go look for it, but if your DOI says that you do 30 hours of classroom management, then how do you check that? What are your processes for teaching, for teacher certification? Who does that? So a lot of times from the service center, we always say the more policies and procedures you have, the better off you are in creating and doing, because that policy states what you do. So if your HR checks every one of your CTE teachers before they're hired, state exactly that. What if you continually have turnover teachers and you hire? We have some very large districts that use some programs and send those back to them for credentials. We have programs that text teachers expiration dates that send them back. So anything that you do here, that's just what you're stating. How do you check it? And it may simply be that you review every teacher's certification prior to hiring, and you make note of any needs for deficiencies, and you create a plan.
Yeah. Oops.
I'm trying to, I had a note for myself in it. So this one is you're going to go and you, what is that part? Sorry, I don't have that part in front of me. Oh,
This is part 6.
Part 6.
Improving, it's all about equity and access.
Okay, so this is part 6.1. So part 6.1 is pretty much looking at the disproportional levels, and seeing if you have any. A lot of you will find that these are very minute, so they don't have a size. That's what my tidbit was. Is so on most of our other reporting, there's a size of demographic like 35, 25. These do not. You could simply have one student with 2 or more races. And we had a district, small school district, that literally had 2 students in a demographic, and it was a difference of a disproportion of 50%. So those are simple things you can state, but here you're just once again stating what comes out of your supplemental guide. Allison, that's exactly what I'd say in part 6 there. If you didn't have any barriers from your MOA, my districts that had MOAs this year and the year before stated, we have no barriers. Everyone is equitably given access to all those areas. We have no prerequisites. We have no admission requirements. Transportation is given to all. I'd really pretty much restate it. Okay?
Yeah.
We've had a few districts that have seen barriers, like in the area of GPA, that CTE is not equitably across some of that. Those are things that you can state, but you simply just need to say there's no barriers. That's all they want to know. It doesn't have to have a book. Okay. Recruitment, this is a great time to sell your programs. What do you do? What are interesting things that you do to recruit kids? But make sure in this one that you include all types of populations. So if you target, and we want to say target in a good way, if you target representation with ambassadors, or you have all 8th grade graders, make sure you say all subgroups. Make sure you cover the all word, that all students have equal access there to recruitment. Once again, they're looking to see that there's no barriers. They're looking to see if you have non-traditional programs and you use ambassadors of that non-traditional model, make sure you sell that there. You only got 1,000 characters, but good thing. But for anything other than what do you do?
Yeah.
And do you do it for all?
Heather and Tally Joe, we have about 5 minutes left that we can record for recording.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
So we'll go fast.
Yeah, and one question that come up from Tracy Hendricks, you can use Perkins money on any regionally or state-approved program of study, regardless of what your stakeholders say. That's correct?
Correct. Your stakeholders don't drive your funding. The stakeholders are here. I think it's where we've always had advisory boards, and they're trying to use what you're getting from those advisory boards. Used to, we just checked a box that said, here's our advisory board, we had it. Now, what's some of the input you're getting from it to ensure you have stakeholders as part of your, do you agree, Heather?
Yes, yeah. They just don't want it to be, that one person in a district that's making all the decisions and not getting, equitable input and really considering all aspects and all, I don't want to say opinions, but all input and really valuing that to make the program the best you can make it.
Quickly, because we want to make sure we get this in, mission and vision is simply, you say what you want. There's no right or wrong there. Just have one. It can even be your district's kind of modified for CTE. That's what we've seen, the input of CTE there. Top 5 priorities, top 3 to 5. These are what I would say here is that if you have a goal for some of your Perkins funding, or you have some big things that you are doing, especially 5 years from now, I would use at least some type of priority in that. If it's industry-based certifications, if it's industry partnerships, they have some good ones. I mean, increase the numbers of CTE learners in our districts is definitely driven by Perkins. But these simple ones are very close to what you're going to see a lot of. So don't try to think outside the box and try to come up with something new. They're these are continually being part of what we're seeing. Okay.
That's the end of it.
Okay. The
Other
overview.
yeah.
This last one, what we have found on these, so the alignment, that's where I talked about earlier with your original one. This is where you want to show what's happening in the regional market data and what you're doing about it. These may be closely aligned for you and they may not. The last one, this is your data. So if you checked it up there, you need to come down here and talk about strategies to improve that. So very first box at the very top, you checked, make sure you cover it here in some way, shape, or form, very much like they did. Okay. Nothing there, nothing scholarly that you have to do. Just make sure you cover it.
Yeah. And then the last part's just the, the contact information and submittal.
And I know, Heather, we clarified with TEA who has access. Who were those three that could save and submit?
It's a grantee manager, official, or staff.
So those three can save and submit. If you have another role in TEA inside of eGrants, then you cannot even save.
Right.
Mark, we can turn that back over to you.
We had a member earlier that was asking that had editor rights.